Welcome to the Field of 68 After Dark's YouTube channel. We are going to be live every Tuesday and Thursday at 9 p.m. Eastern Time right here on YouTube and on Stadium for the entirety of the spring. And what did you make of them and what did you make of the event?
First of all, it wasn't the first event of the EYBL circuit. I guess they've already played a few events while you were busy sleeping in May. AJ Dybantsa, the number one player, the number one prospect in the 2025 class, obviously from Brockton, Massachusetts, could be the second straight number one player from New England, following up on Cooper Flagg from Maine going to Duke this season. And he's electric in how he plays. 6'8", 6'9", long, athletic, skilled, just fun to watch because of the things he can do on the court. And, he's got obviously a ton of expectations on him this year. He's kind of, he went to prolific prep this past season, and I'm not sure if he's going to go back to the Napa Valley prep school next year. But again, he's a guy with all the potential, the highest of high upside, and he produces. He produces. I'd like to see him probably complain a little bit less to the officials, to be honest, and I'll probably tell him that. But when you watch the NBA, as I'm sure he does, it's easy to kind of get bad habits of that. I just don't know how many calls he's going to continue to get, and even on the EYBL circuit. If he continues to do that. But, man, he plays an electric game. He didn't shoot it well from three, Rob, but he can get to the basket. He's great in transition. And his AU teammate from the Oakland Soldiers, Tyron Stokes, who's the number one player in the 2026 class, was awesome. Awesome. And part of it when I watched Stokes was the kind of the change in his body. He's thinned out. I thought last year he looked a little bit like a George Niang type, and he's really thinned down. No disrespect to Big George, but he looks a lot thinner than George does these days. And but he's that type of player, right? Like he can make people better and facilitate. Now he's starting to make shots from three, and he's super explosive now. Like his first step, we didn't really see this that much last summer. Man, he could put on the floor and explode. And he plays above the rim a lot more than he did a year ago. And then, so he's number one in 2026. The other battle is really AJ and Cameron Boozer, the Boozer twins, Caden and Cameron. Cameron's the big guy. He's about 6'10". Caden's the point guard. But Cameron and AJ are kind of in that fight for the number one spot. And it's interesting, Rob, because it's like AJ's certainly got the higher upside as an NBA prospect. But I'm not sure Cameron might not be the better college player because you know what you're getting out of him every single game. He is going to put up, I'm telling you, like he's putting up 20 and 10 pretty much every time you see him. And he's been able to step out and make threes when I saw him this past week in Indy. And they're just so different, Boozer and AJ Dybantsa, in terms of, again, the safe pick in Boozer. And the guy that, man, like is just, again, explosive and far more athletic in AJ.
Yeah, I've always thought that Dybantsa was the guy with the highest upside. Even last year at Peach Jam, I thought he was the guy that had the highest upside of any player there, and that would include Cooper Flagg because of his size, because of his scoring ability, because of his shot making, because of, you watch him and just the way that he moves and the way that he gets his spots and the way that he can elevate. I've always thought that he was the best, the highest upside player in high school basketball. I'm curious with Boozer. I've seen a lot of comparisons to Paolo Banchero in terms of where he currently projects as a player, where I've thought of Boozer as more of like a rebounder and a post player that can step out and hit a jump shot, where Paolo was a guy that's kind of developing into, he's, when you say like big wings, you think of someone like a Jason Tatum or a Paul George, and he's a little bit more physical than that, but he's almost like the modern version of what a stretch four is going to be as the initiator and the number one guy. Like, I don't think Cameron Boozer and Paolo are very close and very similar in terms of how they play.
You know why they're not? Is because you can just give Paolo the ball and say, go make a play. And Paulo doesn't need any help to be able to do it. He can just put on the floor. He's super explosive, and I think he can get his own a lot easier than Cam Boozer can. Cam Boozer, to me, is more of like the traditional, like almost four-man. I know he's going to play some five, obviously, but like kind of what you think of as a traditional old school four-man when it comes to college basketball. He's just going to rebound. He's going to score around the basket. He's not going to – he's athletic, but he's not going to blow you away with his athleticism and his explosiveness like Paulo does.
Give me some updates on where these guys are potentially going, right? Like, are we talking about how can Cameron Boozer not end up playing where his dad, Carlos Boozer, played, right? Like, how does he not follow in those footsteps? Is there any chance that AJ Dybantsa stays in New England for college and finds his way to a place where, you know, that's won back-to-back national championships? And Tyron Stokes, it might be a little bit too early in Tyron Stokes, but I got another question for you about him. AJ and Cameron, where do you know anything about kind of how that recruitment is going right now?
Yeah, it sounds like it's going to come down to Duke and Miami for Boozer. That's what it sounds like. Again, I'm no recruiting expert here, but certainly talking to people at Indy, EYBL, it sounds like it's kind of a two-horse race for the top there for the Boozers, and it's Miami, which I think they live in Miami, and obviously Duke, where Carlos went to school. Dybantsa is a little different. His recruitment's very, I don't want to say unique right now, but certainly his dad Ace is kind of spearheading things with his recruitment. They've made one visit to Auburn so far, and you got to remember. Again, he lives in Brockton. Bruce Pearl grew up in Sharon, Mass., so there's that connection there. Alabama, Preston Murphy, the new Alabama assistant coach, newish, coached him in AU ball before he took the job at Alabama. So I think Alabama will be in the mix too. But, you know, UConn, I certainly think will be in the mix. But I think this is going to be one where like NIL is going to be, critical. I don't think he's going to go somewhere for like low money. Now, again, as I've said before, a program like UConn might be a little bit different, but I also think, AJ, they want AJ to be somewhere where he's highlighted and not just another dude. And it'll be interesting to see how that thing shakes out. But I still think it's a little bit early there. And then you go with Tyron Stokes. And yeah, coaches aren't even allowed to, I think, reach out to him until maybe June or something like that. So that's super early in the process, but it was interesting, Rob, because after the game I saw on Friday night, Stokes played one of the better all-around games I've seen in years on the circuit. He was that good. Like, he did everything. Again, he's an elite passer, but he scored. He dunked over dudes. He was great in transition. He defended. He rebounded. He shot the three. He was phenomenal. And after the game, all of a sudden, you look over and you see him sitting on the bench talking to nobody, and there's like 10 reporters talking to AJ. And AJ had a good game, but not a great game, just good. And part of that is obviously you had a bunch of Kentucky reporters there, right? Beat reporters and team site guys that wanted to talk to AJ. And part of that is Stokes being a year younger and not being as far along, certainly in the recruiting process, and who we could talk to. But I just thought it was interesting. Stokes is a Louisville native, by the way. So I would assume Pat Kelsey and the Cards are going to be all over him to try to bring him back home. I would think they'll be, among the finalists when it all kind of everything clears. But we're a ways away from that.
Where do you stand on what his ceiling is? Because just basically listening to you talk right there, I am preparing myself for the next 30 months of hearing nothing about how good Tyron Stokes is, how you discovered him, how you've seen him. But remember that one time when I was in Indy and he was phenomenal. I'm just preparing myself for this. So we love to have these conversations. We love to say like, ooh, but Tyron Stokes is a higher ceiling than this guy. And I literally just said, AJ Dybantsa might have a higher ceiling than Cooper Flagg. But where do you stand on like how, let me phrase it like this. Put these prospects into context, right? Where even Cooper Flagg, Dybantsa, Tyron Stokes, are we talking about guys that are like the elite of the elite, like potential number one picks, potential franchise guys? Or are we talking about like maybe someone at the top of the 2023 class or the 2024 class where they're pros for sure, but we're not there? It's a different level. You know what I'm saying? It's a different level for them.
No, I think these guys are at a different level than the last few classes that we've seen. I think all three of them are for different reasons. They're all different players too. And Stokes, listen, as I was gushing watching him Friday night, I did have somebody tell me like, this is probably the best I've ever seen him play. So sometimes you get that too. We're not there for every game. I'm not covering him every game in high school and on the circuit. So sometimes you get, listen, I remember the first time, I saw Rowan Brumbaugh, right, coming out of the pandemic, and I was gushing. But it's true. Like we see games that sometimes are a little bit outliers, whether it's for the betterment or sometimes they play like shit and you see him and you're like, man, I've seen him play twice. And you could try to tell me that he's the best player in the country, but man, I've seen him twice and he played like absolute garbage. It's hard to get that out of your mind. So I think I saw Stokes on maybe his best day, and I want to see him more, obviously, in July when we go to the Peach Jam. But, man, just the skill. And, again, if he can make shots, and I guess his three-point percentage went from, like, it was not good at all before he got to prolific prep. And then this past year, I think he was somewhere in the 30%, 32, somewhere in that neighborhood where he became more comfortable shooting the three. If he works, man, I'm just telling you, like the skill set is really impressive.
Yeah, he popped last year too. Like he was really, really impressive last year at EYBL. And one of the guys that I am excited to see when we go down there. Thanks for watching the Field of 68 After Dark. Make sure to hit that like button.